What will Jewish parents not mind if I get more school? Jewish parents love school. So I was like, all right, I'll quit my job and go back to school. I kept growing my blogs. I think they were a little less concerned, but like looking back, they were like, we were worried. We were like, going to see how a few years goes. And I was like in my later 20s. I wasn't like, it wasn't like 22, but it all worked out.
What is going on, Schmoozers? Welcome back to Schmoozing Time. For all my new Schmoozers listening to this week's episode, my name is David Cobby, and I'm so excited to bring you this week's episode of Schmoozing Time. Each week, I get to schmooze with proud Jews across the world and discuss what makes up their personal brand. Today's guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyways to fire you up. With over 54,000 followers on Instagram, she has become one of the most notable Jewish food experts on social media. She's the owner of ModernTribe, author of Sweet Noshings, and founder of What You Want to Eat, which is considered the top Jewish food blog out there. Please welcome the only person who's bold enough to make their LinkedIn background picture a picture of bagel lox and cream cheese, Amy Kritzer Becker. Amy, how is your day going so far?
It's pretty good. Thanks for that very kind introduction. I think more people should have bagel and lox as their LinkedIn profile. So to me, nothing is more professional than that.
You're gonna start a movement. Maybe I'll do that if I wasn't so focused on.
Well, I don't have a real job. I work for myself, so I can, I'm not trying to get a job.
There you go. Well, it's so great to meet you and finally sit down with you and talk to you about, your personal brand. I mean, I just ran through an entire grocery list of things that you've done, and just in the Jewish space, whether it's been food or ModernTribe, oh man, we're going to have a great episode. And, before we hopped on this call, you said you're a schmoozer. So just letting you know, you better live up to those schmoozing expectations. So really, really excited to have you on. And is this your first podcast that you've done, or have you done this before?
I have done a ton of podcasts,
okay.
but not everyone has prepared as well as you have. So I'm excited to schmooze with you today. But yeah, I've been lucky to be on Jewish podcasts, but even just some general food ones or entrepreneur podcasts too, which is very cool. So I'm always happy to chat with new people, and I love listening to podcasts. So
you're saying all the right things. Like me, I love food. I think everybody listening to this right now, if you don't like food, by the way, you can just end the episode right here and leave, because we're gonna make you hungry. But no, also the entrepreneur part of it, I think, is so cool to talk about. And there are so many Jewish entrepreneurs out there that have a brand, and there are some of them that are kind of quiet, and they don't really express their Judaism and their Jewish pride through their brand, whether it's they're in the corporate workplace or they actually have their own company. I think it's so important to actually talk about the Jewish side of you, and it's just such a cool story and a part about you to talk about your Jewish upbringing. So with that being said, I want you to talk a little bit about your upbringing just to kick off this episode and give people kind of, maybe your Jewish background and where you sit on this spectrum of, orthodoxy to, I don't know, Reconstructionist Jew, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm on that spectrum. I guess I'm more on the Jewish summer camp, bagels on Sunday kind of a Jew, high holidays, time to go to synagogue Jew. But I grew up very culturally Jewish. I grew up in Connecticut. I live in San Francisco now. And my town was so Jewish. I went to public school and we got school off for Jewish holidays. So to me, being Jewish was a normal, expected thing. It didn't seem that unique or weird or even that special. I went to 60 bar mitzvahs the year I had my bat mitzvah. It was the biggest social event of my whole life, really. I wish I could do it again. It was so fun. Some weekends you'd have 2 or 3. So, it was just to me, that was just normal. I went to Jewish summer camp, as I said, and I went to synagogue mostly on high holidays and mostly to see what people were wearing, because at that time you dressed to impress. But this all kind of changed when I went to college. I went to Emory in Atlanta, and for the first time, I met people who had never met a Jewish person before, which was crazy to me. And when the Jewish holidays rolled around, I realized I wasn't able to fly home on a Wednesday to go have Rosh Hashanah with my family. And I was like, you know what? I still want to do this. I miss this. This is a huge part of my culture and who I am as a person. So that's when I started hosting my own Jewish holidays. And that's kind of when I first got a taste of the cooking part, which was the most important part for me. So I started with Passover Seder. So I hosted Seders. And by my senior year, there were 40 people crammed into my apartment of all religions. Everyone had their own bottle of Manischewitz because, I was trying to make it as fun as possible. So that was really kind of my gateway into a Jewish career, because really growing up, just being Jewish seemed like a normal thing.
That's so interesting to hear. And, I think as somebody that didn't come from, being surrounded by Jews all the time when I was younger, like I'm from Minnesota, I had a good, strong Jewish community, but it wasn't the same as like being actually immersed in a big Jewish community with, kind of that cultural aspect of it. And, there's this whole conversation about whether Judaism is a religion and a culture. And I can see kind of both sides, like how it's become more of a culture and how it's still, technically a religion. But I guess like a big part of Judaism to let's call them outsiders. I'm not going to use the term goyim to be derogatory here, but I guess
yeah. You and my grandma. Yeah.
I mean, I would use it like in a joking way, but I don't know. I personally, I don't like to like knock people down, but anyway, I
like calling someone not Jewish. You're knocking them down. You're like, no one's perfect. Yeah,
exactly. Anyway, so a big part of Judaism to the outsiders, obviously, is bar and bat mitzvahs, and obviously a big part of Judaism itself too, like growing up, becoming a man or a woman at the age of 12 or 13, depending on your religious observance level is definitely a big thing. And now we've kind of Americanized this idea of a bar mitzvah by turning them into a party and having themes. So I want to ask you, what was your bar mitzvah theme? And can you tell us a little bit about, your party and some special things that happened at your bar mitzvah?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I always post my throwback bat mitzvah photos every year. So if you look on my Instagram, you can see some pictures of me in my blue. When I had my bat mitzvah, everyone wore suits. I had my blue pastel Ann Taylor suit, and I got my matching baby blue nails ready to go. My portion was the 10 Commandments. So that was a big one. Like they're all important. God doesn't play favorites, but that's an important one. But I did have to say, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's ass in front of like all my friends and family. And just like, I could not practice it without giggling. And then I'd look at my brother and he would start laughing. And of course I started laughing in the middle of when I was doing the English part of my portion. My theme was candy. So every table had like an M&M dispenser on it. And for some reason, our party was a kids only party, which at the time I was like, I thought that was like, oh, I want more people there. But then when it was happening, I was like, wait, this is fun. And like when my brother actually had his 3 years after mine, I wasn't even invited. It was like just like just his friends, like, and my parents weren't even allowed in their rooms. I don't know what was happening in there. We may never know. And my gift I gave everyone was a Beanie Baby holding a little thing of candy. And so this was like also height of Beanie Babies. And if you were a guy going to my bat mitzvah, you got a tie-dye dinosaur. And if you still have that today with the tag intact, it is worth, depending on, I guess, where you're trying to sell it, thousands of dollars. So you're welcome for the invitation to my bat mitzvah if you still kept the tie-dye dinosaur. But yeah, I remember, it was a lot of practice and I was, very proud, and it definitely was a high point of my Jewish upbringing for sure. But like, it's kind of interesting that you said growing up in Minnesota, not being surrounded by as many Jews. I really didn't get like the specialness of being Jewish and like really get into why it was important to me until I was not surrounded by Jews, if that's interesting enough. And then after college, I moved to New York City, again, a million Jews, and I kind of faded back a little bit. I'm like, why do I need to do anything when like everything I do is just automatically Jewish? And then, without telling my whole life story, a few years later, I moved to Austin, Texas, and again, was no Jews there, or not a lot at the time. And I got more into, that's when I started my blog, because I was like, I'm kind of missing this part of me again. So it could be kind of special, having a smaller community. You're kind of forced to find your way and find, make your own special part about being Jewish, if that makes sense. So My mom's calling me. I can't go an hour without her calling me. I'm not gonna answer. She'd probably love to be on the phone. She's a schmoozer too, but I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, classic Jewish mother stuff.
Well, she works with me on ModernTribe too, so she answers our phone. If you call in, you'll get Lori. But we talk like 10 times a day, or we joke we talk once a day all day, like just like never hang up.
That's amazing. My follow-up question to that was gonna be how many times you call your mom a day, and 10's definitely got to be the record for people.
Oh no! Well, I live in a city, so I walk a lot. So when I go outside, I just like call her. So I walk my daughter to daycare. I just like call her on the way home, and then I I just went to yoga class. I called her on the way to the bus. I don't know. Like,
by the way, I'm not shaming you at all. I'm saying it's a great thing. Like I definitely need to call my mom more often, even though I talk to her like 3 or 4 times a week, which is like not a lot, but like, I feel like as you get older, you talk to your mom a little bit more. I mean, like when I was living at home, I like didn't appreciate my parents as much. Like, let's be real. Like you're living at home in high school, you have everything given to you. You don't even understand like what living on your own is actually like. And then, all of a sudden you get to college and you're like, oh wait, like I have to make dinner. Oh wait, I have to do X, Y, Z. It's
but
just
you have
like
a lot of questions too. Like, wait, how do I do that?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And it's kind of, tying this back into what we were talking about earlier, when you leave Judaism and a Jewish community and you go somewhere else where there's not a lot of Jewish people, you appreciate Judaism more. And, for me, right, like I kind of did the flip of it, where Minnesota has a very strong Jewish community. I'm not going to deny that. But then I went to University of Maryland, and there, we're 20% Jewish, which was nuts. So went there for 4 years. And obviously like that was like a wake up call for me. Like, whoa, like, my Jewish identity can be so much more than that. And I know you talked a lot about, or you just talked about in college, how you kind of created your own Jewish community at Emory. So maybe go into a little bit more about your Jewish identity while in college and how it kind of shifted. You talked a little bit about how you appreciated it more and you started doing things to bring Jewish people together. Maybe talk a little bit about how your Jewish identity and your mindset surrounding Judaism shifted during college, which kind of set the stage for your career.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, our rabbi growing up had this term he would call bar mitzvah fade away. So it's like you had your bar mitzvah, then you just like faded. He told my brother that he was going to be a bar mitzvah fade away. Those kids that are just like, don't want to go to Sunday school, don't want to study. And like, I don't think you should probably tell a kid that. And now my brother owns ModernTribe with me. I'm like, now you own a Judaica store. You could not have faded away less. Like you have faded in. Like he married a woman from Israel. Like, I'm like, you did it all. You did it all. Like that, he should be ashamed of himself. But see, as I said, I kind of just looked at Judaism as, a culture, like, just didn't seem like, a big part of my identity growing up, maybe because it was just so like ubiquitous, I guess. But then when I was in college and I started having my Seders and, doing Hanukkah with my friends and Rosh Hashanah, it definitely like, woke something in me, but I never, ever thought of a career in anything Jewish. I was planning on, I switched majors a few times, so I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but it wasn't that, probably something. I ended up in business school, so something business related. And then when I moved to New York, I worked in conference production, which was such a fun job. I traveled around the world. I planned the content for different marketing conferences. And then I became really good friends with the people I worked with. So I was like, 24 in Las Vegas with a corporate credit card for a week. And life was good. Life was good. And on the side, I was trying to date and definitely wanted to date someone Jewish, but was, 24. I'm like also dating whoever struck my fancy, so that was a long-term plan, but I wasn't, being very serious about my Jewish life at that point. Then the recession hits, and when was this? 2009 or 8 or something. So, and all of a sudden we weren't, our budgets got cut dramatically. So, my fun, worry-free life got a little more worrisome, and on a whim, I picked up and moved to Austin, Texas. This is before Austin was cool. So my friends in New York were like, what are you doing? Like, do you have to get a horse? Like, what? Like, why would you move to Texas? And, but I loved living there, and I started working at a consultancy, and that was a very boring job. Like, it seemed like it was going to be fun, And as soon as I started the job, I was like, oh, there's no creativity, which ended up being a blessing in disguise because I started my blog when I was bored at work. And I like read at the time there wasn't, there was Facebook, and Facebook was like in chronological order. So I'd like scroll and then you'd reach the end. I get to like the end of Facebook. I'm like, all right, now what am I going to do? Like I still have like 6 more hours at work. Like, so I started reading food blogs, which were just kind of getting trendy too. And I decided to start my own. And initially I was going to do a blog about cupcakes because I was really into having theme parties, and I'd make cupcakes. I'd have a 90s theme party and make some like yin yang cupcakes to go with it. And I told my brother, mostly because I needed his technical help helping me set up a blog. And he said, you're going to get tired of making cupcakes every week. What if you did Jewish food? And I was like, and again, I'm thinking my upbringing, I'm like, everyone knows what a knish is. It's like knish is, it's like pizza, like it's so common. So, and he's like, ask your friends in Texas if they know, what a knish is. And I grew up also very Ashkenazi. So that was the kind of Jewish food I grew up with. And of course, no one knew what it was. And I said, this is kind of a light bulb moment. And again, living somewhere where there weren't a lot of Jewish people, and I could share my culture and share my religion with my new friends in Texas. So that was an aha moment. And I started my blog at work. And eventually I was like, this is, something I want to do with my whole life. Actually, that kind of started, I got an email. I didn't even know like who was reading my blog. I couldn't even tell that kind of stuff. This is before I was on Google Analytics or anything. And I got an email from a reader who had said her dad wasn't Jewish, but her mother was, but her mother had passed away when she was young. And now she was in her 20s trying to like reconnect with her mother's side of the family, and decided to do it through food. So she was like Googling Jewish recipes, found my blog, made all my recipes, and like sends all the pictures. And like, I was like at my desk, like crying. She was like, I feel so connected to my like culture for the first time. And I was, to me, food is it. That's how, I'm connected to Judaism, is like my number one thing there. So that was when I was like, all right, this has got to be my career somehow, even though I was losing money blogging at the time, mostly just buying ingredients. That's what started it. Oh, I gotta text my mom back now. She's worried I'm dead. Let's see. I'll tell her after. She's gonna be so embarrassed.
It's so funny because I was literally going to ask you about, you talk about how you started this blog and then ultimately you quit corporate America. And, I can not imagine what that conversation was like with your mom. Like, I got to know, since you're bringing her up all the time, like, how worried was she when you decided to quit your job and pursue the blog full time?
That's also a very good question and observation. So at the time, she didn't let me know how worried she was. Like, my parents are very good about, they're very supportive. They're the kind of parents, I grew up mostly in the 90s. They're like, you can be anything you want. You can do anything. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to like quit my job and go to culinary school. And they're like, oh, not that. But really, I think that was my thought process too. Because I was like, all right, I'm not making any money on my blog yet. So I can't just quit my job and like do this. But like, what will Jewish parents not mind if I get more school? Jewish parents love school. So I was like, all right, I'll quit my job and go back to school. So I saved up money, and I went to a culinary school that was like a 1-year intensive program. So it was every day for, I think like 4 hours. So I saved up some money. So it wasn't just like a rash decision, but like kind of. But I saved up some money and I like planned, and then I got a job doing cooking demos at a supermarket. So I was like, I had a little microphone and I was like cooking up samples, and I actually like loved that job. I just met up with one of my coworkers I used to work with, and we were just like, that was just it was just so fun. You're just like feeding people all day. And we had little wine samples and Dixie cups, so people would have a little Dixie cup of wine and like tell you about all their problems. And mostly you were trying to sell sauces and, seasonings and stuff. But anyway, I loved that. And then I also got a job selling Jello shots at a bar, which is actually how I like made money. So they're not thrilled about that mostly. But there's big money in Jello shots. But anyway, so like I kept growing my blogs. I think they were a little less concerned, but like looking back, they were like, we were worried. We were like, going to see how a few years goes. And, how old was I? I did that. I was like in my later 20s. I wasn't like, it wasn't like 22. It was people were growing up at that point. So, but it all worked out. And I think, a few years into that, I was doing a lot of like freelance writing and recipe development. I had more sponsored content. So I was it grew slowly but surely. And at one point I thought about getting another job, and I applied for this job at a food startup. So it was like definitely something that seemed fun. But in the final interview with the CEO, he was like, I saw your blog. Like, how are you going to balance doing this job with like your time doing that? And I guess I didn't give a good answer because I didn't get the job. And then a week later, I got a cookbook deal. So it all worked out. So, but yes, to answer your question in a roundabout way, they were concerned, but didn't totally didn't tell me, so they let me kind of figure it out. Yeah.
Like good Jewish parents do.
They're good Jewish parents for sure.
Yeah. I feel like, depending on who your parents are, like they have selective showing of their anxiety. I guess it's so cool that you got into food in particular, because the food business actually is so like, people don't think about it as like a profitable business to be in. And like, restaurants obviously have a very, very low profit margin, and it's a very hard business to break into. But, the kosher food business specifically, like with kosher foods, I mean, that business, like, I believe is somewhere within the trillions, because people don't really realize like there's so many things that have like an OU on it, or Triangle K, or whatever it is. And, we know that I joke about this on another episode. There's regular inflation, and then there's Jewish inflation, because the kosher foods are just like completely overpriced, rightfully so. I mean, if you want to look at the supply and demand of it, right, there's less supply for it. But anyway, I guess like, in your food career, you've had just millions of opportunities to like promote yourself through various channels. And one of the cool things that you've done is you were on Guys Grocery Games in 2017, and that, like, I mean, I can tell you, I would watch that show. It would be like, so I grew up modern Orthodox, and we would sometimes leave on the TV during Shabbat, like on a timer. And in Minnesota, Shabbat would start at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And that was the show that was always running. So I probably watched close to like 50, 60 episodes of Guys Grocery Games. So I love that show. I mean, Guy's just an absolute character. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience and being on Guys Grocery Games, kind of the selection process of how you got there?
Yeah, that was such an awesome experience. And I'll tell you, the guy, anytime someone's like, says something not nice about Guy, I was like, no, he is the nicest, kindest human being. So I will back you up that I loved him. He introduced himself to each of us individually before we started, and had like clearly done some research, like read our blogs, not just the first page, like, just like you had like said some very specific things about me, and it just, makes you feel good. And he's a mensch. So I'm glad you enjoyed that show too. But yeah, it happened very fast. A producer reached out to me. She had found my blog, and the logo on my blog is a unicorn. I say it's a junicorn. It's just, it looks like a unicorn. It doesn't have, it's like, oh, you should add a yarmulke or something. I was like, no, it's a secular junicorn. Like they just look like everyone else. I don't know. But she's like, I love unicorns. I thought your blog was cool. Do you want to be on Guys Grocery Games? I was like, when? And she's like, next week. I was like, all right, let's do it. So it was like really fast. And I was living in Austin at the time, but they film it actually in the Bay Area, kind of near where I live now. So they flew me out, and it's in this like big warehouse fake supermarket, and you're kind of standing around all day because I do like a few episodes at a time, just kind of like waiting for your turn. But it's all real. Like, it's like the timing is real, like you don't know the challenges till right before. And I feel like I got a little ripped off because one of the judges, first I made eggplant and he didn't like eggplant, and then my steak was like a little on the rare side, and like he likes more well done steak. And I was like, oh well, like but I didn't embarrass myself. I feel like I showed off they're big on point of view. So my point of view is, of course, Jewish food. So I felt like I got to show that off, and I had fun. So spoiler alert, I didn't win, but it was like a super fun experience. And I told them I would be in for a rematch. So we'll see if that ever happens.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, being on that show is so cool, and it's kind of cool to hear about it from a contestant's point of view, because the production behind that, like, people don't really like conceptualize that. And the cool thing with Guys Grocery Games is it's like, I mean, that layout is like an entire supermarket, and it's just like it's fully stocked. Like, it's not like they don't miss like an inch of detail. Like, you are in a supermarket.
Yeah, I think the first season they used a real supermarket, and then they started like recreating a fake supermarket. And I can't I think if you were like, oh, I love using tahini or something, you could say that and they would make sure you had tahini. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember, but pretty sure. But yeah, it's wild. You get a tour. So you get to like kind of see the supermarket. But I worked at a supermarket. I love supermarkets. Great experience. Great. Yeah.
I just think the creativity behind it is so cool. And the creativity portion of food is so important. And I think you know that best. I mean, when it comes to all these trendy foods, right? People are making the craziest things, and presentation is another big thing with food. And it's not just, obviously the taste is the most important thing, but creativity, if it's not marketable, right, you can't sell it, the whole description, whatever. There's definitely a lot of like marketing to it. And I know you, with your blog, have some very, very creative ideas. I mean, I literally just went on your blog before this call and I saw you have spinach artichoke Hamantaschens up there as a recipe, which I think is awesome. Like that could be made for football or even for Boredom. Like, so I guess like, what's your inspiration behind this creativity? Like, how do you get this creative idea to combine, spinach artichoke dip, which is a household American dip that you see in restaurants and at home, combining that with a traditional Jewish food? Like, that blows my mind. Like, what's the creativity process behind that?
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part, honestly. I would say the hardest part of Guys Grocery Games was the timing, not the ideas. Like, it's so fast. So normally I'm I don't work at a restaurant. I work in my kitchen. I can just play around all day and take weeks to think of ideas. But I think the beautiful thing about having my Jewish, it works for ModernTribe, or what you want to eat is it's so seasonal. There's always a holiday coming up. So that kind of helps like target my recipes. So I know every Hanukkah, I'm going to do some kind of latke twist because like everyone wants that. So that's where I start with. And then I kind of think of like, what are food trends or what are things that I'm eating? Sometimes I get inspiration, like this wasn't for the spinach artichoke dip, but like maybe if I was at a restaurant, there was like a spinach artichoke puff pastry, I'd be like, oh, that would work as a hamantaschen. And I think anything can be a hamantaschen if you believe in enough. It's a very versatile food. And some of mine maybe like are not, is it a hamantaschen? But no, I don't know. Who cares? It's just food. So yeah.
What's been like your favorite recipe that you made? I know I mentioned the hamantaschen, but do you have a favorite of that you've put on your blog, or maybe one that's like blown up, I guess?
Yeah, probably one of my recent favorites was, which I was so surprised. So the longer I've been blogging, I started in 2010. I always Google, I think of an idea, I Google it to make sure no one else has done it. And it has gotten so much harder. Like I used to, come up with like, not that crazy of an idea, and someone had, no one had done it. And like now I think of like the most crazy, unique thing, and it's like already been done. So I sometimes I'll still do it if I can put enough of a change to it, but I try to have recipes that are very unique. So one I thought of, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, was fried pickle latkes. And I was like, surely someone's done this one. And no one had done anything like it. Now some people have done it, but after me, which is fine. I don't, it'd be nice if they cited me, but whatever. I think that kind of thing doesn't bother me, but, I was surprised no one had done it. And so I did, a latke wrapped around a pickle slice, fried up. Fried pickles was one of my favorite foods. When I moved to Texas, that was like a really big late night food. So I was like, I love this. And I told a little story about my late night fried pickles that I would eat at Katz's Deli in Austin, Texas, which is now closed, but is reopening, I heard. So that's exciting. And then, it was on Good Morning America. It was on some other stuff. So people, I think it was on the Drew Barrymore show. Like people were like really loved those latkes. So that, honestly, it's one of my favorite. I love them too. Like I make up these crazy recipes, but at the end of the day, I just want a classic latke for Hanukkah and I want matzo soup for Passover. But the fried pickle latkes I make those every year now too. So those are one of my favorites.
So creative. I'm also a huge fried pickle enthusiast. I know.
Yeah, and Jews love pickles too.
Oh,
so it just makes sense.
Oh my God. Jews love the salty, the fatty food, clogging your arteries. Anything that clogs your arteries, like it's good. But no. Go ahead. Sorry. No, you go.
I was just saying about the presentation too. Like a lot of Jewish food is, brown, especially the Ashkenazi food. So
oh my God.
I try to add in some color where I can too.
I like your direction because I'm technically half Ashki, half Sephardi, and my grandmother, she's Lebanese, so all of her food obviously has the spiciness and that to it. So I think your twist on how you present quote unquote Ashkenazi food is so cool that you're doing that. And it's like very innovative, the way that you think about, positioning your recipes. And quite frankly, it's your brand. And what you put into the blog clearly is working. And it's got you on, obviously Food Network, the, Good Morning America, the Drew Barrymore Show, like all these things. Like you've done clearly a really good job of just promoting yourself and your brand to this audience and spreading awareness. So I think, that's like amazing that you're able to take, that idea of like, I'm passionate about writing a food blog and taking that to national media. Like, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when I started, I asked my grandma, my mom's mom, my bubby, if I could have her recipes, which were all, not only were they Ashkenazi, but they were like note cards with chicken scratch. Like it was honestly barely a recipe at all. So that's where I started with her recipes. But then as I started, to learn more about, the history of Jewish food and like the beautiful evolution of it, then I like learned more about, Sephardic and Mizrahi flavors. And like, now I like to combine the two, which totally makes sense. Like Jewish food is kind of, a combination of where we've lived, plus our histories, so when I was living in Texas and I met Jews that grew up in Mexico that would put chilies in their matzo ball soup, like, I love that, of course. And I like to think my Polish ancestors would have, used avocado if they had access to it. So I don't think there's like anything wrong. The Jewish food, especially all food, has just like evolved as humans have evolved. So I think adding our own twist on it is just like what we've always been doing. And I think sometimes people think like what they grew up with is like the food, but I'm like, that was just your interpretation. It's not like the only way to do something. People get so passionate, which I love, and they get so angry,
right,
about things. It's just food.
Yeah, no, people get very passionate about food, and you talk about evolving. A way that you kind of evolved your brand and your awareness across social media is you acquired ModernTribe in 2016. And, it's definitely, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, when I first saw that, I'm like, they're both Jewish, but like, how do they both tie into each other? So I want you to talk about why you decided to acquire ModernTribe and how that's kind of, you've paired what you want to eat and ModernTribe and built a brand that's quite frankly super unique in the Jewish food space.
So around the same time, so 2016, I had started my blog in 2010. So this is around, maybe a year earlier was when I had applied for that job that I didn't get, got my cookbook deal, and my boyfriend broke up with me, and I turned 30. So I was like, this is a crazy time. Like I just need to figure something out. So around that, all that kind of stuff happened at the same time, and I knew ModernTribe. The previous owner, actually, funny enough, lived right by Emory, where I went to, in Atlanta. So it was a kind of a full circle moment. And I knew I was an affiliate for her. So I was familiar with the brand. I promoted sometimes on ModernTribe, on What You Want to Eat, and she sent an email out to her newsletter saying she was looking to sell the business. And I just had this kind of aha moment. Like when I started my blog, there were no influencers. There were, you would just write about the food. You did not have to share about your personal life. You didn't have to do Instagram stories all day, every day. It was just it was a simpler time. You knew everyone. Most people weren't making money or that much money. So everyone just loved food. No one was like, how can I get rich? So it was a happy time. So by this point I was like, all right, I don't want to be doing this forever, that I'm like looking for like my next sponsored post, or I have to feel like I have to like promote toilet paper to pay the bills this month. I'm looking for like more of a long-term career. And I'm just like I'm a social person, but I just like don't like to share like my whole life online. And I really try, but I'm like, out, not to have my phone out all the time. Of course it's hard, so especially now that I have a 2-year-old, and like she when I'm on my phone, she's like, mama phone, like she's like, show me pictures of challah, which was great, which is cute, So, yeah, luckily she loves food, so but anyway, so I was like, this is where I want my career to go. I don't want to be just like an influencer. So it seemed like the perfect extension of my brand. And I already had this audience that loves modern Jewish food, and ModernTribe is all about like modern Jewish products. So I'm like, if you're going to have this beautiful Seder, why don't you want like a Seder plate that reflects your style? You want a mezuzah that reflects your style. So I was like, this seems like a really good next step. So she had, more interest than just us. And I reached out to my brother. Mostly because I didn't have any money. I was like, would you like to buy a business with me? And he's like, all right, let's do it. So obviously he's much more practical than me. I'm like, quit your job, go to culinary school. He was like, show me the numbers. I was like, oh yeah, numbers, sure. So we do, obviously we went through it and decided it made sense to invest, and we just totally changed the business. We redesigned the site. We moved to like a fulfillment center. We've we have so many more products than they did back then, but it was a really good base to start at, to have like the relationships with some of the artists, and like, just like everything started and a brand already started to be built and everything. So really it's become like my passion. I still love my blog, but connecting with people through like the products, and people are often celebrating. They're buying something for their wedding, or they're buying a gift for a new baby, and they're like, oh my God, I read your blog. I didn't know you owned this store too. So it's like, it's just my favorite part of all of it is just like connecting with people, and people will be like, oh my God, I made your kugel for my mother-in-law. Like, that's the first thing she's ever liked that I've made ever. And then they're like, and I bought a menorah. I'm like, thank you, I love you. Like, so it's just been like really rewarding to build both these businesses.
That's so amazing. And I think I saw something the other day that was like saying how the dollar within the Jewish community, like that turnover rate is like much higher than the national average. Like, I think there's something about, people want to buy from Jewish companies. They want to buy Jewish products, obviously. And, I think, again, going back to this outsider perspective, like people might look at that as like, oh, some sort of bias. But in reality, like, it just shows how tight knit we are. And, I think it's so cool that you're kind of balancing two separate entities, essentially, like this blog, but also, ModernTribe, which essentially it kind of fits into what you're doing, because you're giving ideas to make the food, but then also you're providing the products to put it on, and just like things that resonate with it. So I think that aspect is just like really cool, how you like kind of tied in a food blog with a company that distributes physical products. So like, that's just like really cool from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I really think of it as like one business. It's kind of like they feed into each other. And like, I guess everyone's a potential customer, I suppose. So,
right.
But yeah, it's more like, like the product. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity from my like this, and I hope, my viewers also like this, but, big thing that like I learned about in school, and it was my second major, is supply chain. And, I think a big part about having a business with physical products is you have to understand what's in your supply chain. And you kind of talked about the relationships that you have with, Jewish businesses that are people that are Jewish that give you the products and distributing it. So tell me a little bit about, your supply chain within ModernTribe, and how you've kind of reworked it so that you're actually building this business to become profitable.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think something that separates our business from other, Jewish, I guess, Judaica stores, not that there are a ton of, is like I work with a lot of small artists. We have like over 100 brands. I have to probably 150 different brands we work with. And some of them are literally like an art teacher, that makes paintings on the side. So it's, these are not all like big corporate companies. And I love, and like a lot of them don't know how to get their products out there. So we have, if anyone's listening who has a product they sell, we have under About Us on ModernTribe, you can apply to be a vendor. So a lot of people are reaching out to me to sell on the site. I find a lot of people, on Instagram, especially, to try to like find these new artists to work with. But then, we buy from bigger companies too, which I like to, of course you want to support like the Jewish brands, but I think it's so cool when someone like, Kate Spade or Spode is making Judaica. Like, I want to encourage these companies to like have Jewish products. So, I think I want to buy from them as well. But I would say the majority of our brands are Jewish owned small businesses. So I think, again, like the food, the nice thing about Jewish holidays, the seasonality, like right now, Rosh Hashanah, I'm trying to get rid of everything, sale afterwards, get rid of all that stuff. Hanukkah, everyone buy the Hanukkah stuff. And I buy, like a little at a time. So hopefully by the time Hanukkah's done, everything's gone or it's on sale. So it's a good time to stock up for next year. But so yeah, we're running low. We have like hardly any honey left. If you need honey, I don't know when this episode's coming out, but yeah, you're out of luck. You're at the supermarket. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. Then of course we have our items that are available all year. Mezuzah cases are probably like the most popular. You would think at one point everyone has a mezuzah on every door. Like I would just like at one point, like how often do you need a mezuzah? It's like one of our number one products we sell. And Jewish jewelry, something, I don't know if this is good or bad or is interesting, is the more anti-Semitism, the more incidents, the more people buy Jewish jewelry. It's like, which I think is a cool thing versus the opposite. People aren't hiding. They want to show off their Judaism. We do have a few products. There's one that actually was from like Spain originally. It's you unfold it and it's like little butterflies, and you fold it up and it's a Star of David. So you can be like hidden or not hidden as a Jew a little bit, which is kind of sad but kind of interesting. So I think that's from the Inquisition, I guess. So it's been like around for like a long time, this design. So but in general, people are always looking to show their Jewish pride with Jewish jewelry too. So.
Totally. I think a big part of my identity is, wearing my Magen David and, showing that. And obviously with the bring them home, little dog tags, like that's another big thing. So I definitely think, the more that people hate us, want us executed from the world, the more we want to showcase our Jewish pride. So it's definitely, challenging as somebody with as big of a brand as you, being Jewish, there's definitely some sort of like prejudice to some people. Thankfully, you work within the Jewish community, a lot of Jewish people. So I don't think, you're really exposed to that. But I mean, really, you've done so much with your brand, and, whether that's being amassing like thousands and thousands of followers on social media to appearing on, Guys Grocery Games. Like there's just so much that you've done. And we didn't even talk about your cookbook. Like there's so many ways that like you've just been able to promote yourself and you as a person through these different channels. So I guess like my question to you is like, what's next for you? Like, what's your next move to make sure that your brand is continuously growing? Because, this idea of social media is evolving every single day, and there's new things going on every single day. So I guess like from a social media standpoint, what are you doing to grow your brand continuously and keep up with like the trends within the social media sphere?
Well, I will say, I can give this recommendation too. I've just been a little burnt out on social media, and I have not been, but if you look at my posts, I have not been posting as much as I used to post. Part of it happened when I had my daughter. I like didn't really want to share her, and that was like all I was doing. So I just wasn't sharing as much. And then I just I got tired. I'm tired. So I'll be honest, I have not been posting as much on social media as I used to. And I'm like, maybe I need to like hire someone to make some videos for ModernTribe or something a little helpful of some of the trends and all that kind of thing. So I'm on TikTok too, but no, I don't do all that. I haven't learned to dance yet. I haven't done all those things. So, but I think there's other ways to promote, yourself too. And I think something that I've enjoyed also is like meeting. One of my favorite things besides meeting like followers is meeting other Jewish creators too. So I'd love to connect. I guess my favorite thing about social media is like connecting with other like-minded people. Especially, since October 7th, it's just been like a really like tight-knit community, and I think people really want to help each other. So I think, connecting, promoting other people, and then they like just promote you in exchange, like not even asking for anything, just being like, oh, this person like made a really cool ebook. I bet my audience would like it. And then they share like, oh, ModernTribe's having a pre-sale for Hanukkah. I bet my audience would like it. So I think something beautiful with the Jewish community is you want to help each other. So I think I found, people have just been really like helpful in wanting to promote my products and stuff, and I in turn want to help people and promote their stuff as well. So always happy. Again, if anyone's listening wants something they want me to share, I'm like, sure, happy to share stuff as well. And then something I'm working on in general for ModernTribe is we buy from a lot of Jewish companies, but I'd like to like make more of my own products. So we have our line of Hanukkah pajamas. We have a menorah that we came out with. So it is hard to make your own products. Like it takes a lot of time. There's things that go wrong that you like did not anticipate. So if that's something I'm passionate about that I'm working on now, and eventually I'd like to write another cookbook. But again, I'm like, all right, if I write another cookbook, I really have to like probably get back on Instagram and like promote it. And that just seems tiring. But we'll see. We'll see where things go.
I definitely agree with you with the social media burnout. I think we can all use a break from social media. Yeah, I'm being a hypocrite and sitting here doing this podcast, which I'm going to promote on social media.
No, it's hard. It's hard when it's your job. You can only, you want to like separate and like live your life and be present, but then you're like, my life is like on my phone.
Right. It's definitely difficult. And yeah. I mean, I think schmoozing is the best way of growing your brand. Like you said, you connect with other Jews, and obviously word of mouth is the best way to grow anybody's brand, whether it's just a personal brand or a food blog or ModernTribe. Like there's the power of word of mouth is so much more powerful than any other form of marketing. So I think, you're kind of a testament to that, where you've kind of grown your brand through just talking to other people and schmoozing. I think that's kind of how you really have been able to just grow each of your segments, whether it's what you want to eat or ModernTribe or your cookbook. Like, I think that's kind of been from talking to you, I feel like that's kind of been like the key thing for you.
Yeah, I love schmoozing. I wish I could do more in person. When I wrote my cookbook, I went on a tour. I went to like 40 cities, and like I wish I could do more of that. Like I like that more than behind the phone, and I think I shine more in person than on the phone. But yeah, listen, my Bubby's still alive. She's like, oh, I met this woman. Her grandson lives in Dallas, and like he needed a mezuzah. I told him to go to ModernTribe. I'm like, that is how, like, she's our number one, advertiser there. So I appreciate that.
Love that. Love that. Well, yeah. Amy, this has been a phenomenal episode. I think.
Yeah, great chatting with you. We could have chatted for like another hour, I'm sure.
I know. We didn't even go into a cookbook or anything. Okay. But I guess before we end this episode, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so my blog is What Jew Want to Eat, JEW, What Want to Eat. That's where I am on all the handles and everything. And then my store is ModernTribe, moderntribe.com. We're on Instagram, we're ModernTribe_Jew, because someone already took ModernTribe, but that's okay. But honestly, it stands out more. You're like, ModernTribe Jew? Like, what's that? Like, and I will say something I didn't mention too that's important to me in both my businesses, and I think being a Jewish business is tzedakah, giving back is always something that we've instilled in ModernTribe. We always have products where we donate the profits. When we do have a Bring Them Home necklace, and we've donated, I think it's been like $120,000 we've been able to donate to Israel. So yeah, we sold a lot of necklaces, and people are still buying them, which again, I'm like, does everyone have a necklace by now? But apparently not. So so that, to me, that's another really important part about being a Jewish business owner, is giving back.
Totally. Well, Amy, we appreciate you giving back your time. And I want to thank all my listeners. Make sure you're sharing this episode with somebody in addition to following Amy. I think there's been a lot of amazing stories that she's told that you're not going to hear on any other podcast. So make sure to share this with somebody that would like it. Until next time, keep schmoozing.